we are on the precipice of the greatest, most explicit rollback of individual rights in the history of this country. It has been legal in this country for a woman to decide what she will do as far as maintaining a pregnancy for 50 years. And we are moving into an era where in at least 25, maybe up to 28 states, as of maybe July of this year, women will be forced to carry pregnancies to term. They will be forced to give birth. At least that's what the state intention is. And so the idea that this would happen without any protest, or that there is some measure of just protest that would be off limits, is absurd. Here is neighbors of Justice Kavanaugh. Literally, his neighbor organized a protest. What's her name?
I'm not sure, but she's done this before, right? Do we have her name? Bradley's getting it, but you know those block parties got to be awkward.
Her name is Lacey Wooten Hallway, and she has been conducting a lot of demonstrations outside Kavanaugh's house even before the decision was leaked. So she's kind of been on the ground in Chevy Chase, Maryland, for quite some time.
Okay, so and so his neighbors have protested. There's about 100 people out there, and here it is.
Back. We will not go 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 back.
Now, I should say, Chuck Schumer lives in Brooklyn, and almost on any weekend, not any weekend, but maybe 3 times, 4 times a year, depending on what's going on, there will be a crowd of more than 100 people out in front of his building,
which is a high rise, right?
It's not it's a bigger building in Brooklyn. It's right by Prospect Park, and people are protesting. Now, think of how many times we have seen outrage from the media, how many times we have seen the White House tweet about you shouldn't be protesting this. And let's also be clear. There have been multiple times over the years, including in the 2012 decision of the ACA, it was reported in the Wall Street Journal that there have been lobbying by conservatives on the court. In 2012, it was of John Roberts, to try and pressure him to reverse, to really sink all of the ACA. There is every reason to believe that this leak, because of the Wall Street Journal editorial from 2 weeks ago, before this leak came out, where it was clear that there was pressure being asserted on these 5 Republican appointed Supreme Court justices, a couple of whom were wavering in their decision about abortion, to hold tight. So it's not like there isn't political pressure that we have documented reporting about that is taking place just because it's happening behind closed doors.
I mean, there's articles about how anti-abortion activists were getting impatient with Amy Coney Barrett. Just go down the list. But this is beyond the pale. They want the pressure to be exerted onto them at cocktail parties and at legal functions. But if it's so this is the White House tweet here? Yeah. But if it's the actual people doing it, that's beyond the pale.
And here is Jen Psaki. POTUS strongly believes in the constitutional right to protest, but that should never include violence, threats, or vandalism. Okay, here's the point. We played that clip. There hasn't been a single report not a single report of violence, threats, or vandalism. There was 100 people out there in the rain, standing on the sidewalk or in the street, saying, we will not go back. And so by setting this up like this, all of a sudden they're creating a straw person. The fact is, I'm old enough to remember where there was a Republican senator on the floor of the Senate talking about why he could understand why people were threatening federal judges. We didn't see any of that. And yet the White House is out there making this now about the threats to the judiciary. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're doing nothing else. Nothing else. They're not talking about reforming the Supreme Court. They're not talking about court packing. They're not talking about pressuring anybody in the Senate to bust the filibuster. None of it.
So there's no violence, threats, or vandalism that we've seen.
There's no concern for their personal safety. None of it.
But this is state violence that these conservative priests are imposing on half of the population. Women are going to seek alternative methods to end their pregnancies, which could be dangerous. Hopefully there's, it's different from before the Roe times and there's more access to abortion pills, but still, this is the state forcing women to carry pregnancies to term, and that is state violence in and of itself.
Meanwhile, here's Justice Clarence Thomas also complaining about he is at a speech. I don't know how he got to go at a speech with all the threats and violence. How could he have possibly left his house?
He needed to be in a panic room.
Justice Thomas, people need to live with outcomes we don't agree with. Now, it's quite possible things are so tense at the Thomas household that this is his way of trying to signal to his wife, Ginny Thomas, that you got to get over this whole 2020 election thing that you were part and parcel of in the storming of the Capitol. It bodes ill for a free society that the court can't be an institution that can be bullied into giving you just the outcomes you want. Now, of course, remember, Ginny Thomas was pounding Mark Meadows with texts, not get the people out. You got to tell Trump to do something. She was saying, you guys got to pursue this.
Yeah.
Because Joe Biden stole the election. And as far as protests, put this one up too. I'm also old enough to remember when this Supreme Court, no, that's not it. When the Supreme Court ruled that in Massachusetts, the buffer zone that they had set up to keep anti-abortion protesters from harassing and terrorizing women who were going in to end their pregnancies, the Supreme Court struck down that abortion clinic buffer zone law. Scroll down into this piece and you'll see some of the quotes. Keep going, because you've got John Roberts saying that there's a room for that the First Amendment is the most important thing. Here it is. Even though the act is content neutral, it still must be narrowly tailored to serve a significant interest. The buffer zones burden substantially more speech than necessary to achieve the Commonwealth's asserted interest, which is to protect these women. So here it is, like the standard in which, and just to be clear, the standard in which these people are using, and by these people I mean the justices, is that to abridge free speech in the question, I guess, of abortion, one must need a incredibly high threshold. But of course, whining that 100 people are out in front of someone's house saying we will not go back crosses that threshold.
You just have to live with decisions that you don't agree with. You just have just like my wife. You just have to live with decisions you don't agree with. Yeah, right. Women will be forced to live with this decision, and they'll have to work around this decision. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we have to go quietly into the good night. Give me a break. You don't have the mentality of these justices as if they're above reproach and they can make these decisions that affect hundreds of millions of people's daily lives, and that because they have lifetime appointments and because they're ostensibly outside of politics, they're free from consequences. Sorry, no dice.
And we should say, this whole process is clearly incredibly political. That's what that leak was
Right.
about. I mean, it was about pressuring. It wasn't about maybe 100 protesters are going to change Kavanaugh's mind. No, this was about locking in those conservative justices and voting that way. And if they actually ever do find the leaker, I think that's going to be quite obvious.